Good morning. It is really good to be back, and it's good to see you, and it's good to know that you at home are here. Welcome to all of you. We actually have some newcomers with us, or visitors, so welcome to the visitors that I'm seeing here. This is a little bit of an unusual service. I'm just back from 3 weeks away, and you'll be hearing about some of my learnings from my trip to northern Spain in the fall. But I was afraid that I might be jet lagged at the end of this week, so it seemed like a good time to do one of my favorite services, the question box service. Is that something that's been done here before? No? Okay. We'll see how it goes. These always seem like a great idea to me when I set them up, and then like the night before I realize how nervous I am about doing this. So we'll see how it goes. Several of you sent in your questions in advance, and I'm going to start with those. If you came in with a question that you have, if you'll raise your hand, Jen will bring you a card and a pen to write it on, and you can then bring it up to me during candle lighting. So does anyone have a question that they know they want to have asked? You got it. Just put your hand up so she can see you. Oh, okay, we got one over here. Okay, in the back. And if you, those of you at home, if you type it into the chat now, Sandra will write it and bring it to me during candle lighting. So this is your opportunity at home to have your questions addressed as well. And I'll do that for about 20 minutes, and we'll see how it goes. I chose opening words that I have are new from my colleague, the Reverend Gretchen Haley, who is one of our ministers in Colorado. And when I read this poem, it just really spoke to me. So I decided to read it to you. She writes, "Today, God is running late, trying to find their seat, scanning the room for someone they know or someone they don't. God's feeling evangelical this morning, but not in a judgy way. Mysterious, but not manipulative. But God is tired. God is tired of grief and white supremacy and the warming of the oceans, and hasn't it been too hot? God just wants to be present this morning, to stop worrying about everything, to sing, to breathe, to laugh. We got you, God, we say. We'll settle in and we'll be present and we'll sing. We'll tell stories. We'll take a deep breath, maybe right now. We'll remember ourselves and offer whole galaxies of gratitude for the beauty of the still blooming salvia and the full apple trees, the too many zucchini breads and tomatoes, and the U.S. women's soccer team. We'll be grateful for entire villages of people saying, "You are safe here. Your creation is not yet done creating you. So come, my friends, let us worship together." And in the spirit of that hymn and gratitude, would you rise in body and spirit and sing with us, "We Give Thanks," hymn number 1010. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. I'd be willing to bet that was autocorrect, deciding what the word was supposed to be.
Christina Heinemann is going to join me as we light our chalice, which is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Our chalice lighting words are from Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. If you don't understand, ask questions. If you're uncomfortable about asking questions, say you are uncomfortable about asking questions, and then ask anyway. It's easy to tell when a question is coming from a good place. Then listen some more. Sometimes people just want to feel heard. We light this chalice to increase the possibilities of friendship, connection, and understanding. Good morning. My name is Jenna Curran-Rugiel, and my pronouns are she, hers, and I have a few brief announcements. Our website committee is working on an updated look for our website that will honor its history and feel while freshening it up and making it even more inviting for potential new members. This is also being timed as part of our efforts to attract our next minister. The committee is asking for your recent photos showing what our vibrant, welcoming, beloved religious community means to you and your family. So please send your photos to Sandra at office@uufh.org. As you know, Unitarian Universalists are a passionate lot, and we are dedicated to our second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. If you are interested in walking the talk on the second principle, please consider becoming a member of one of the UUFH's social justice teams. The Social Justice Committee is now the umbrella for some of the committees that were previous in the Faith in Action cluster, such as HI, the Huntington Interfaith Homeless Initiative, Beyond Our Walls, which is the committee that works with a nonprofit to share our split plate for every month, the Blood Drive, the Hungry Basket, and more. We are also forming teams to work on such issues as racial justice, climate justice, voters' rights, LGBTQ issues, and reproductive justice. But it takes 3 people to constitute a team, so we need your participation. Please contact Nikki Willard for more information. Last, Opera Night, Long Island, a not-for-profit organization providing the island's only live opera series, continues its monthly programs this Friday, August 11th. The performance will take place here at the Fellowship. Doors open at 7 p.m. and the program begins at 7:30. A $10 donation is requested at the door. Opera Night's mission is to foster the appreciation of opera by providing local and affordable opera of the highest caliber with established singers and emerging young talent. Now, please join me in saying aloud our mission statement. The words will be on the screen. Oops, or are we singing Common Ground? I believe we're singing Common Ground. We're singing Common Ground, which is a different kind of affirmation.
This is the time in our service where we invite you to come forward to light a candle for a joy or a concern in your heart. Cindy Niebuhr, would you join me up here at the candle table from our Pastoral Care Associates? If you would like to have a joy or a concern shared aloud, Cindy has a basket with cards and pens, so you can, if you've come with something to bring it to her. If you would also, Jenna, if you would go down and maybe stand on the other side, and if you have a written question for me for the sermon time, bring it forward to Jenna. You may now come forward. Nancy Wilco wrote me this morning and asked that we light a candle for Larry, who had another seizure last night. He's at a specialized hospital that deals with epilepsy for evaluation, so I know you send your prayers and thoughts to them. And we'll let you know if there's anything that the Wilcos need. David writes, I celebrate the joy of being welcomed into a caring home when I needed it and the joy of moving onward. Here's a concern. Pray for Claudia and David. For Ricky. This says, thank you for an amazing birthday. I don't know who that is, but hope for a successful Sophia Foz camp, which is next week? Yeah. Next week. A week from today. For Poppy. For Karen, the woman identified last week as the victim of the Gilgo Beach killings, who was a classmate of mine in high school. I'm so sorry. Would you join me for a few quiet moments of meditation, reflection, or prayer? Spirit of life and love, be with us. Let us feel the presence of the mystery or the stillness of our own hearts. We know that some things seem impossible to bear. the murder of someone we knew a long time ago, an inexplicable sudden illness, a new diagnosis, the end of a relationship, mental health issues that don't feel like they're ever going to go away. And yet, we also know that there is hope and much to celebrate. The celebration of birthdays, the celebration of new homes and moving onward, the celebration of the beauty of this earth in the summer heat and warm days of the flowers, the water, the blue sky. The hope that we hold in our hearts each day, and the gratitude for this day, this opportunity to once again get it right, to be kind, to smile, to hug, to welcome newcomers, to know that together we can face it all. Together we can celebrate. Together we share our lives. And so may it be. Amen.
Our split plate this month is for the Huntington Township Housing Coalition. The group's mission is to encourage the development of affordable new and rehabilitated homes, both rental and ownership, for low and moderate income individuals and families in Huntington. They do this by assessing and documenting the need, educating the public, identifying, monitoring, and promoting affordable housing opportunities, and collaborating with other public and private organizations. We all know how important this work is, as many Long Islanders who would really like to stay are forced to leave, whether it be our children or seniors or anyone who can't afford the incredibly high prices on Long Island. So please give as generously as you can.
wonder why that's August. Thunderstorms or, interesting. I chose for the music before the sermon as a piece by Carrie Newcomer. Do many of you know her work? She's one of my favorite folk singers. She's not a UU, but for all intents and purposes, she could be a UU. And so we're going to hear two songs from her today, one now and one at the postlude. Enjoy learning about Carrie Newcomer.
Let it go, my love, my truth. Let it sail on silver wings. Life's a twinkling, that's for certain, but it's such a fine thing. There's a gathering of spirits, there's a festival of friends, and we'll take up where we left off when we all meet again. I can't explain it, I couldn't if I tried. How the only things we carry are the things we hold inside, like a day in the open. I like the love we won't forget, I like the laughter that we started and it hasn't died down yet. Oh, let it go, my love, my truth. Let it sail on silver wings. Life's a twinkling, that's for certain, but it's such a fine thing. There's a gathering of spirits, there's a festival of friends, and we'll take up where we left off when we all meet again. Oh yeah, now didn't we? And don't we make it shine? Aren't we standing in the center of something rare and fine, some glow like embers, or like through colored glass? Some give it all in one great flame, throwing kisses as they pass. Oh, let it go, my love, my truest. Let it sail on silver wings. Life's a twinkling, that's for certain, but it's such a fine thing. There's a gathering of spirits, there's a festival of friends, and we'll take up where we left off when we all meet again. East of Eden, but there's heaven in our midst, and we're never really all that far from those we love and miss. Way down in the water, there's a glory all around, and the wise say there's 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Oh, let it go, my love, my truest. Let it sail on silver wings. Life's a twinkling, that's for certain, but it's such a fine thing. There's a gathering of spirits, there's a festival of friends, and we'll take up where we left off when we all meet again. And we'll take up where we left off when we all meet again.
So that's a nice description, right? A gathering of spirits, a gathering of friends, for what we try to do here each week. So I'm going to do about 22 minutes of Q&A. We'll see how far I get. And I will, many of these questions would require a whole sermon in themselves, so I may return to some of them during the year ahead. First question, so I'm going to just start with the ones that were submitted in advance. What led me to Unitarian Universalism? My story is probably similar to many of you. In fact, when I'm finished, I'll ask you to tell me, raise your hand, which is that I married a man who was Catholic. As those of you who are with us on a regular basis know, I come from a Jewish background. We were fairly non-religious in our early 20s on our own. When we got together, we did what my ex-husband used to say was eating our religion. So you get it, right? So if it was Passover, I made chicken soup. We had ham at Easter, latkes at Hanukkah, right? So we ate our religion. And when we had a child, we knew that we wanted to offer her more in terms of a religious upbringing and background. How many of you found a UU church because you had a child that you wanted? I mean, look at y'all from the front, look around. It's a lot of us ended up here because we had children and we either were in a multi-faith marriage or had rejected the upbringing that we had received. And so only about 10% of Unitarian Universalists are actually born and raised Unitarian Universalists. And unfortunately, we also like to say the children we are raising often go to other denominations or leave. My children, for example, are not active UUs. Any of you also have children who are no longer active UUs? Yeah. So there are a lot of us in that as well. We hope they're going to come back when they're a little older, right? That's my hope, is that as they move into their 40s and have their own children, they'll come as well. Okay, second question. What do you think about the afterlife? And have you ever had an experience that makes you believe in a spirit world? So I am pretty agnostic about what happens after this life. As someone who grew up Jewish, and for the people here who also grew up Jewish, this is not a big thing in Judaism. We don't talk a lot about heaven, and we definitely don't talk about hell. Although there is some Talmudic references to a heaven, it's really not something that's a big thing. And when I was taking a class on death and dying when I was in seminary, they gave us a 12-page questionnaire on your beliefs on the afterlife. Will you be wearing clothing? Will you meet up with your old-time relatives? Will you look, what age will you be? I mean, it was pages of this. And everyone I wrote, don't know. And theologically, what I would say to you is that I think that living on this plane takes everything I've got. And so, if there is something else, I would like to think that I have lived well enough to have earned whatever that something else is. But I don't know. No one's ever come back. You remember Houdini promised he would come back? He didn't come back. So we simply don't know, and frankly, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, except when someone I love passes. And when someone I love passes, and in the having, as I think many of you know, I lost my mom in May, that I often feel their presence. I mean, not just in my heart, but there's an appearance. And so on the issue of have I ever had an experience in the spirit world, I have to say I have. As a chaplain in the hospital, I actually had many of them. But I'll tell you a story that just happened. So my birthday was last week. And the night before my birthday, we were in Spain. And I was like, I'm really sad. My birthdays for my whole life has started with a phone call from my mother. And my mother would call and sing happy, she wouldn't say hello, she would immediately sing happy birthday, okay? And that's what my mom did on birthdays. And I realized she wasn't gonna do that, right? So we all know grief isn't linear, it comes and goes. So, I did some crying and was sad. So next morning, it's my birthday, and my partner, actually now my fiance, I've started telling people. Okay, I wasn't planning to do that. That was a surprise to me. What was I talking about? No. So he, got up and said happy birthday, and actually did not immediately sing. I said to him, "You have to sing." And we were getting up to leave. We actually were leaving that day. So I was packing. I pulled the suitcase out and I was packing. And out of my suitcase, so there's a zipper thing, and I opened it thinking I was going to put something in, and out fell the program for my mother's memorial service on the floor. And it felt like my mom was there. It didn't feel random to me. I have taken that suitcase. We had packed and unpacked 6 times. It hadn't fallen out. I didn't know it was there. I had put it in there after I left Connecticut, the day of my mom's memorial, and there was my mom saying happy birthday. Okay. Is there a distinction between UU humanism and religious humanism? So I think that's a complicated question that perhaps humanism could be a whole sermon in itself. But there is a clear distinction between people who consider themselves secular humanists and people who are religious humanists. So a secular humanist is somebody who is not part of a religious community, doesn't turn to ritual and historical religion for their belief, but believes that it's all about how we are and how people are together. Religious humanists are also many of religious humanists are members of ethical culture societies. Any of you ever go to the Ethical Culture Society? Yeah. And if you go to an Ethical Culture Society service, actually it's not called a service, it's called a Sunday program, and this is called the platform, this time of the service, and they definitely don't sing hymns, they sing songs. And you have to be very, very careful with your language, as you used to have to be in UU churches and congregations. But they are people who believe that it is in community that we answer the important questions in life. And those may not have to do with any kind of external force in the world. Many people who are humanists also are, like me, agnostic theists. Like, I don't know if there's anything beyond us. On some days, I feel there's something beyond us. On other days, I'm pretty sure that there's not. But many times I choose to believe in a God, particularly in bad turbulence on an airplane. I get very theistic. But I pray. I don't necessarily know who I'm praying to. I may do a worship service on prayer next year as well. But the difference, UU humanism, I don't quite know how to define that because I think it's very varied. Many of you probably consider yourselves humanists. Others of you consider yourselves theists. Maybe some of you, like me, are both theists and humanists. An interesting thing to say to you, and might be controversial, is I don't care what you think about God, whether you believe in God or not. That's your personal understanding of how you make meaning of this brief time we have in the world. What I care about is how we behave to each other. And I think that's the essence of what Unitarian Universalism is. I am personally really glad, though, that the allergy that we had as congregations in the 50s and 60s to using religious language is no longer present, that we can acknowledge the diversity of beliefs and that we can use spiritual language in our communing together. Interestingly, there are only 3 really active ethical culture congregations that are big congregations, And the one in New York and in the one in Washington, D.C. are both led by Unitarian Universalist ministers. So if you were to go, you would probably find the religious leader as somebody who you would feel quite familiar with. Okay, I love this one that came in. It said, do you have a favorite biblical passage or story? What is it? Because the what is it made me smile. I was going to go, yes. And so I want to do two. One, I'm going to tell you a story that I'm guessing you don't know. Does anybody know the story of Jephthah's daughter in Judges 11? No. Okay. So you're gonna. This is like for your cocktail parties. All right. This story. As I think many of you know, I was a sexologist when I went to seminary, and I read Scripture for the first time pretty much from a sexological viewpoint, and was very surprised to find that Scripture was much more affirming of sexuality than I knew or that the radical right would want you to think. Somebody just laughed in there. Jephthah's daughter is a story in Judges. Jephthah is a warrior. It says actually in the text, he was born of an Ammonite and a prostitute. Specifically, it says, and a prostitute. And we would say sex worker today. And he is thrown out of his town by his brothers who say, you're really not our brother. And he goes to another place. Then there's this big war, and they come and they get him because he's supposed to be a fantastic warrior. And he goes and he says, will you re-accept me if, I come and I lead this fight for you? And the fight's not good. And they kind of conditionally say yes, and the fight's not going so well. So Jephthah prays to God, and Jephthah says this ridiculous thing to God. Jephthah says, if you let me win this battle, I will kill the first thing as a burnt offering for you when I get back to my home as a victor. That's his promise. So Jephthah wins the battle and comes home, and I'm thinking like what? Like he's thinking a cat's gonna walk by? Like what's he gonna offer here? And who does he see but his daughter? His one only daughter. He doesn't have any other children. His daughter's walking down the path. And he says to her, I'm really sorry, but I made this deal with God, and I'm gonna have to kill you. That's bad parenting. And so she says to him, honestly, go look up Judges 11. I'm not making this up. Look at the NRSV version, because like the King James version kind of cleans up this story a little bit. So she says to him, can I have 2 months off? And what I want to do is I want to go away with my friends to the hills and celebrate, but also mourn that I have never known a man. I'm still a virgin. I need to go mourn this for 2 months before you do what you have to do. So Jephthah's daughter, who doesn't have a name, by the way, goes with her friends of unnamed genders for 2 months. And they are all together doing God knows what, because they don't tell us that in the text, but she has 2 months away, and then comes back. Obviously, there's a question, why did she come back? Really, would you have come back? And she comes back and she says, I've never known a man, specifically named as a male person. I've never slept with a man. And then the text says that Jephthah does to her what Jephthah has promised. We don't have a lot of details in that. And the women of this area, every year the text says, remember and lament Jephthah's daughter because she had never had sex. So that's my favorite anti-celibacy sexuality story that nobody on the evangelical far right ever talks about, right? So that's your cocktail party story. I think my favorite passage is a passage that we see in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which means that it's in 3 of the 4 canonical Gospels, which we know then means that Jesus probably actually did say this, which is where Jesus is asked, what are the great commandments? And I'm sure I've preached about, this has been in sermons before, and Jesus replies, There are two, going back to Leviticus. Love your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your might. And the second is the same, to love your neighbor as yourself. And I really believe that that's, along with Jesus, that that's really all any of us need to know. Okay, will the current socioeconomic climate on Long Island affect attracting a new minister? So the first question is I hope not. This is a very expensive area to live in. You heard a little bit from Jenna about the difficulty in housing. My flip answer is not if you pay them enough. The more serious answer is that you are going to be a very attractive congregation in search. I know that there is funding available to help somebody at least a little bit with a mortgage. A two-couple family, a two-earner family is going to clearly find it easier to move here than I did as a single person. Housing is clearly an issue here, but I think that you will can be very competitive in your compensation, and I really expect you will have no trouble finding a really great minister next year. If you could give them a house in the package, that might help. How do you see Unitarian Universalism evolving? What do we need to evolve with it? So I think this is a really interesting question. Every kind of religion has to be evolving right now, right? We are all in a post-COVID evolution. I think we need to really understand that what we learned from the pandemic, that church is not the building, that coming Sunday worship should not be the definition of membership, that we need to think about how do we engage all the people who are part of UUFH who don't come on Sunday mornings and have them be more involved. I think we have the potential to continue to be one of the few denominations that is growing. I think all those spiritual but religious, not religious but spiritual people, which is a number of people who are increasing among young people, we would be a natural home. We need to figure out how to get people involved. And I'm really excited about the number of young people, in fact, who have joined UUFH in the last couple of years, and think we need to do a whole lot more of that. What do we need to evolve with it? And that's such an important question. You all probably know there's a controversy going on with some people who have been rebellious against the move to being an anti-racist denomination. They're called the Gadflies. I don't know if many of you have heard about this. And they're not within our church, but within the denomination. And this started in, I think, 2018, 2015, 16, because I was still in Reston. And they feel that, yes, we are welcoming, we want new people to come, but we don't want to change who we are. And as we have sought to become more anti-racist, as we have sought to become more welcoming, we have to be willing to let the congregation change. We have to be willing to let things evolve and let new people have a voice and a say. So it's not having a closed circle and saying, you can come into this closed circle. It's like opening the circle. Oh, there's a report from the UUA Commission on Appraisal called Widening the Circle. I actually would like to say busting the circle open. So no, it's still a closed circle, even if it's this big. What if there's no circle? What does it mean for us to be truly welcoming and truly inclusive? Okay. How has the UU changed in the past 10 years? Well, there's been, at the national level, there's been a real change in the leadership. So we now have, and have had, since Susan Frederick Gray became president, people in their 40s and 30s in key leadership positions. So the baby boom has been we've become elders, and younger people are now in charge. So that's clearly had a difference. We have made in 2017-18, we made a much stronger commitment to anti-racism and anti-oppression. You all voted to become an 8th principle congregation. I think that has changed who we are and how we understand ourselves. And as I mentioned, we, I think, are more comfortable with spiritual language. Very interestingly, we really didn't have many women ministers until after the 1979 Women in Religion Conference. We're now 56% of UU ministers are women now. We are also, when I did a study for the UUA back in 2010, we were about 24% queer ministers. I think we're probably over 50% ministers who identify as queer on some place in that spectrum. So there's definitely been a change in that leadership as well. Have you ever had a crisis of faith, and how did you push through? And part of me wants to say, I have a crisis of faith all the time. Although maybe not a crisis, maybe it's an opportunity. You know, I'm constantly trying to understand what I believe and what the situation is calling for. I'll tell you a quick story that right before my ordination, so it took me 13 years from the time I first felt called to the ministry in a UU pulpit during a summer lay-led service that I was leading. It took me 13 years first to accept the call, then to get through school, then to get through all the requirements, which are very rigorous to be a UU minister, before I was ordained. And the Tuesday night before my ordination, I sat up in bed at 1 o'clock in the morning and said, I can't do this. I'm not ready to do this. I'm not good enough to do this. I'm not prepared to do this. It was truly, if you know Bible stories, it was Jacob and the angel wrestling all night. And I stayed up all night and was absolutely convinced I had to cancel this ordination on Saturday. And I thought, all right, before I do that, let me call some of my mentors. And so I did, and I said, you know, I'm just not ready. And Reverend John Buren said to me, it's a really good sign that you don't think you're ready, because this is not a completion process. I was ordained 20 years ago. You don't get ordained and you're done, right? This is an ongoing, my understanding of my faith, just like your understanding of your faith, is an ongoing evolution. So I went ahead with it. Hopefully you think that was a good idea. Do you have any advice about dealing constructively with a possible sociopath? All I'm going to say to that person is please make an appointment and we'll sit down and talk, because I actually had a sociopath in my life. I will preach about this around Yom Kippur this year, who stole all my organization's money. So whoever you are with that question, and if you're at home, please give me a call and we'll sit down and talk. Okay, this says, do you consider yourself a theist? So we talked about that. What major factors played a part in you leaving Judaism and becoming a UU? So I sort of answered that. I want to be clear, I never left Judaism. If you read anything about me online, I identify myself as a Jewish Unitarian Universalist sexologist minister. And all of those words are really important to how I understand and see myself. Why I don't worship in a Jewish, in a synagogue, or why didn't I become a rabbi is, I think, a different question. When I first got involved with religion, it was about the same time that I was getting involved in feminism. And Judaism, as those of you who grew up in it know, is very patriarchal. And at Wesleyan, which is where I went to college, the rabbi at the time would only let men come up for a minyan for the number of people that were required to pray. And I just couldn't have any of that. You know, I mean, it just was like, whoa, this is not a place for me. And at the time, which was in the mid-'70s, I never met a rabbi who, they were just beginning to ordain women in the Reform and conservative movements. There are rabbis I have met and worked with subsequently that I thought if that had been my rabbi, I might be a rabbi. The bigger difference for me is I don't find the liturgy useful to me. If you go to a Friday night synagogue or a Saturday synagogue, you're working from a prayer book. It's the same prayer book every week. You read the same things this week. Those of you who know are nodding. This week to next week. There is very little emphasis on homiletics, on sermon giving, except for the high holidays. And so it just doesn't talk to my heart the way this religion talks to my heart. However, I'm one of those people who once born Jewish, you're Jewish. And so, like, that's a core part of me as well. Reverend Deborah, what was the question about UUs most often asked in Spain? So Spain, like most of Europe, is very secular. So there weren't many questions about what we did in Spain. We learned pretty quickly that when we said we were pastores, that they, first of all, it was very weird to a lot of people, like as a woman, that I could be a minister. Because most of them, if they grew up in anything, they grew up, you know, in a Catholic tradition, and so they had never seen a woman in this role. And to whoever asked that, frankly, we stopped trying to explain in my pidgin Spanish what it meant. And the last question, and I went 27 minutes, but said, was there any reaction from the UU governing board about the firebombing of the UU Church in Plano, Texas, because of their support of LGBTQ rights? And the answer is that our new president did release a statement. There has been work that's been going on quite some time, though, to talk about security issues. I know our security team met to talk about what happened in Plano. I want to assure you that we have really excellent security measures in place. A shout out to the security people for the security team is that they're still looking for people. So if you'd like to be part of that, please see Terry Donaldson. And to remind you that Texas isn't Long Island. They had thank goodness, they had some warning about this. Okay. Okay, I can't read this, I have to finish talking. I'll read it in a second. So they were interrupted in a service by a group of right-wing people protesting. And so should that ever happen here, the security team is talking about what we would do, and then we would increase our security measures. If there's more that's happened since then, we'll continue to talk about it. Some of us were surprised by your blessings during a service a couple of months. In my experience, I've never participated in a UU service where the minister offered a blessing to individuals or called congregants to be blessed. Could you talk about this practice in the context of Unitarian Universalism? So, really interesting question. It's not necessarily a UU practice, it's a Deborah practice. And I think I told you that when I asked a year ago when I was first here as your transition minister about doing it, the worship team was like, oh, no. But then I thought, this year, I know you. And I knew that it would be deeply meaningful to some of you. And many of you actually made an effort to talk to me afterward in the several weeks saying how meaningful it was to feel a blessing. I believe anybody can bless anybody. I don't have, when I went to seminary, they didn't give me magic hands, all right? Episcopal seminary students get magic hands. Did you know that? There's a class where they learn to turn the water into the wine and to sanctify things and stuff. So I didn't get any magic hands. But what I know is that we can bless each other. And we can bless, and that people often need somebody to reflect with them on what's deepest inside them. And I found that offering those of you, and it was a voluntary thing, I would never line you all up and, like go, down the rows. But I found those moments deeply moving with people, with those of you that I know, because I know what's in some of your hearts. I know what you struggle with. And don't we all need to hear that we're loved? So, okay, that went a little long. I hope you enjoyed the question box sermon. I got through it. Thank you. And we're going to close with the hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, hymn number 1008 in the Teal Hymnal. That was the sermon, by the way. The closing words are from Rainier Marie Rilke. Be patient towards all that is unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms, like books that are written in a very foreign language. Do not seek the answers, which cannot be given to you now, because you wouldn't be able to live them. And the point is to live everything, to live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without even noticing, live along into the answer. My friends, go in peace. May our real service begin. And for the postlude, we're going to hear There's Room at the Table for Everyone by Carrie Newcomer. The words are on the screen. The chorus is There's Room at the Table for Everyone. You'll see a lot of dancing feet, so if you're moved, you can get up and move your bodies a little bit. Carrie Newcomer to close us out.
Let our hearts not be hardened to those living on the margins. There is a room at the table for everyone. Room at the table.
Okay, we're trying to go full.
Let our hearts not be hardened to those living on the margins. There is a room at the table for everyone. This is where it all begins. This is how we gather in. There is room at the table for everyone. This is how we gather in for everyone.
Thank you to our dancers, and thank you to everyone who joined us today and for introducing us to that great singer. I'm excited to listen to her more. We'll have some refreshments, so please join us in the social hall, and please welcome, say hello to Reverend Deborah, and congratulate her on her fabulous, exciting news.